everyone, I'm Mims and welcome to the channel. Thank you for being here. So I wanted to do a little video about how much I love tarot, and so this is a little bit of like my own little Valentine to tarot, and I was inspired by the poem from Elizabeth Barrett Browning, How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways. And I actually made a video like this about a year ago, but I deleted a bunch of my old videos and restarted my channel last May. So I don't have that video and I don't even have the notes for it. But I still came up with a list. So what I'm gonna do first is just read a short excerpt from that poem, and then I have a little list of what looks like 20 different things that, 20 different ways that I love tarot. And I'm hoping this video will be pretty short. I don't have any decks to show, so this is just me in front of the camera in my pink jacket. This was as Valentine's as I had in my closet. So let's first start with an excerpt from the poem. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight. For the ends of being and ideal grace, I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. So, not as poetic. I thought about trying to make this into some, to go in that voice of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, but I didn't quite give myself time to even attempt that. So this is just me in my good old just chatting. Tarot is there for the big questions. I love tarot because it has helped me in times when I was really stuck or lost in where to go forward, or stuck in a choice, and figuring out, it might be like a personal dilemma of should I move, what is it? What are some considerations that I'm not thinking about if I take this job? What about moving abroad? But even bigger questions, like getting into how can I get involved in politics maybe in different ways than I have in the past? Or why is our world so unjust, and what can I do about it in my own personal life? So it can be big personal questions or just big, what feel like really big questions. And then of course some of the questions go way beyond that, but those are just, maybe some small examples of big questions. And then tarot is also there for the small questions. It may be very simple in terms of an everyday kind of a dilemma, or maybe it's not even a dilemma. Maybe it's just, what's the energy that I need to consider today? So small ways that help guide me in the day-to-day, that then also help me if I feel guided in the small ways, then it also allows me to then ponder those bigger ways that I was mentioning earlier. Tarot is there when there are no questions, but maybe I need a temperature, some kind of an indescribable assessment. Sometimes I come to the tarot with very direct questions, and sometimes it's more thinking about maybe an overall perspective. I did a reading around my birthday last summer, and I didn't have a question like moving directly, like, what do I need to consider in the next year? But it helped me to kind of give an idea to different factors or parts of my life and my life overall. And sometimes it's even just the energy behind the question. But I love that tarot can be there even when there are no questions, or when I am so at a point of loss that I don't even know where to begin and I don't have a question yet. Tarot is a way for me to love and appreciate art up close. And I did not know that when I first started with tarot. which has now been a little over 10 and a half years ago. But tarot has allowed me, it was always a subject that I was interested in, but never allowed myself to pursue that interest in art appreciation, creativity outside of writing or other things. But I have been influenced by lots of different decks and the beautiful art, fine art, cartoon illustration, abstract art, surrealist art, and so forth. And it's one of the many reasons that I love tarot, but I love that tarot gives us, and I know that lots of other people have talked about this, but that tarot gives us a chance to really appreciate and get up close to that art way differently than we might say a painting on the wall or a piece of art in a museum. And I love it for that. And in fact, some of us get to have tarot with the art that would have been in museum walls, you know, thanks to curated art and so forth. I love that. Another one, shuffling and just sifting through a deck or even just looking at the cards is something that gives me joy and is part of my practice. I can remember almost always, since I've had a tarot deck, that I have shuffled or flipped through or even just fidgeted with at times. Just having a deck in my hands, shuffling, sometimes looking at the cards, not necessarily that I'm in the mood of, or that I'm even in the mode of writing, but just looking through the cards. And sometimes it's in the appreciation of the art, and sometimes it's just in the comfort of having that deck nearby in my hands, having something tangible to hold. I love it for that as well. Getting into tarot was the first time that I heard and obeyed, if you want to use that term, my very clear inner voice. Now, I've only been reading tarot for 10 years, but I think for a good chunk of my life, I have fought battles with myself, fought my instinct, went against my instincts, couldn't hear what my instinct was, couldn't hear my own clear inner voice, and tarot has helped me to tap into that. But probably the very first time where there was like a very clear, it was a very clear inner voice that told me to go buy a tarot deck. And I know that that was born out of something that I had been interested in for a long time. And I did just that. In the summer of 2015, I heard that voice. I was in the middle of packing and cleaning. I was getting ready to move, but I had some time. And I drove to a bookstore, bought a tarot deck, and then went to a used tarot or a used bookshop where I had some trade-in credit, and I cleaned them out of their tarot section. They had 3 or 4 books that I bought all right then. And I've been playing and reading tarot since then, you know, whatever that is, a little more than 10 and a half years. But it was that first voice that told me to go buy the deck. And then since then, it's helped me to interpret my own intuition, helped me to tap into my tuition, and helped me to get clearer about not fighting my own self. And tarot has given me that, and I appreciate that. Let's see. Tarot helps me connect with the spiritual and live a spiritual life. I have still some, what I'm going to call, I I still have some baggage and some shadows around religion and spirituality from what I grew up in. And I'm in the midst of working with some of that. I'm on probably the second year or the beginning of the second year of a shadow study self-work thing. And tarot has allowed me to open myself up to that spirituality that I have sometimes denied. And also it helped me to open up to more than one possibility. And it definitely, I know that that's not for everyone, but for me, tarot is definitely part of my spiritual practice. And I love it for that, because it helped me to get back to and find my own and discover my own spiritual practice and what that looks like and how I do it in a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, part of my life. Tarot helps me with my own creativity. Sometimes I just need a little perspective. Sometimes it's as simple as being inspired by the art in a deck to help me realize, like, it doesn't matter what it looks like. Be creative. That's part of being human, is being creative. And I think for the longest time I told myself that I couldn't be creative, or that I could only be creative in my spare time, that I was not set up for a creative life in terms of maybe, making art or otherwise. And tarot has helped me to, for one, realize how ridiculous that is, and two, to understand that there are a lot of different types of creativity, and sometimes you just have to do it to stay tapped into it. And it doesn't always matter if it's good or not, but just doing it. And in multiple different ways. Whatever the kinds of art that I'm interested in, tarot, I think, has given me sometimes even the bravery to try something new, to explore art that I would not have tried maybe even 10 or 15 years ago. So it definitely helps me with that. And it has also helped me in mundane ways. If I'm writing something and I just need a little something, sometimes a tarot card pull will help me with that. Sometimes it's even about prioritizing where I'll put that creative time within the day. Sometimes it's as simple as using a card for a journaling prompt, or using a card for a jumping off point for writing a short story, or for making a piece of art, or even just to think creatively. Tarot has helped me with all of that. Tarot's magical. I've always been what I would call a magical thinker. And I don't necessarily mean magic like spells. I just mean magic in the sense of recognizing that there are miracles and magic happening everywhere. And tarot has helped me connect to that belief, or even returning to that belief. In remembering that life isn't always just about laundry and politics, but that life can be magical in very small sorts of ways. And tarot helps me connect to that magic. I love collecting tarot decks. My criteria for collecting a deck is that I have a certain budget parameter that I won't go over for any deck. And I want every single deck in my collection to be something that I would pull out of the basket or grab from the shelf or take from the desk and use it. But I appreciate getting to hold these works of art in my hands, getting to see this art up close, discovering the art of an artist whom I didn't know before, or connecting with well-known art in a curated deck. Falling in love with an artist that I didn't know. I like, and I consider that part of the practice. I like looking at decks. I like buying used decks. I like mass market. I like indie. I like old. My only criteria is that the art speaks to me in some way, and that it's a deck within a certain budget, and that it's a deck that I would use. I don't want anything in my collection be something that's too rare or too expensive, or something that I'm worried about not using, or that I'm too worried about using it. I won't collect anything that I wouldn't use. And I love that. I love getting to have a little tarot collection. I am basking in the abundance of more than one deck. And I love that part of it too. And I'm unapologetic about it. I just decided there are so many things to feel bad about. I'm not going to feel bad about loving a deck and wanting a new deck and collecting more decks. I'm cool with it. The next one, tarot provides ample opportunities for learning more. And it has that in common with some other things that I'm interested in. I love that tarot is a lifelong learning pursuit. You can pick up one deck and you could still keep studying it, right? And there are so many different aspects of study. Whether you're looking at just improving the way you read for yourself or the way you read for others, picking up another system. Maybe when I first started, I started in the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, and then eventually I picked up both Tarot de Marseille and historic decks, as well as pip decks and Thoth. I love that each gives me a slightly different approach to tarot, and yet sometimes I kind of smash them all together. I love that there's always something new to learn about tarot, whether it's learning a little bit about the tarot history or learning how the cards have changed over time, and even how somebody in 20 years is going to have a different perspective for what we consider modern tarot now. There are, if you go back and if you pick up an older how-to tarot book, say from the 70s, you're going to have some different meanings than you would from the way that some of those cards are interpreted today. Same as going back to tarot in the 1900s or Tarot de Marseille before that. There's always something new to learn. There's always another perspective that pops up. I watched a video the other day and I couldn't tell you what it was, but it was a side comment that someone made that gave me a different perspective on a card, and I appreciated that. Sometimes it's even just reading that card and seeing it in a different way for myself. Whereas that possibility would not have been there, say, 6 months ago, but that card, that day, that moment gave me something new to learn and to think about. And so there's always something new to learn with tarot. A new perspective on the court cards, a new perspective on reading reversals or not, a different spread in a way to get a broader perspective, a new way to use tarot for mindfulness and journaling and so forth. There's just so much to learn. And I love that it's something that I could continue to do even if I only had one deck. That I could still continue to learn. And I appreciate that about tarot. And this goes to the next one. All you need is one deck for tarot. And in fact, I have made a video where I talked about the fact that you don't actually need a deck. You could take 78 pieces of paper, put some numbers on them, put some words on them maybe, or not, and you could use that as a tarot deck if that's all you had. But I would argue that, and I've made one with numbers 0 through 77 with index cards, and I've used that as a tarot deck at times. So all you need is one, and maybe a book, maybe not. You could check books out from the library, you could borrow a book. There are so many ways of learning tarot, but really it's one of those things, you know, you don't need more batteries, you don't have to replace. A well-worn deck is a well-worn deck, and even the most well-worn decks can still be used. So I love that it doesn't require a lot of extra gear. It's fairly, you know, one deck is fairly small. It doesn't require batteries, it doesn't require infrastructure. All you need is one deck. And you gotta love that. Tarot is something that I can do completely alone. This kind of goes back to the thing of like, all you need is one deck. I love when I can have something to do that doesn't require someone else. I can read for myself. I can learn with a deck and a book by myself. Sure, classes are wonderful. Sure, a tarot gathering, which I would love to be part of at some point. Having, you know, tarot friends. I have a couple tarot friends that I text and email with. I have some friends that are maybe more YouTube channel kinds of friends, but watching other people's videos and commenting on their videos helps me to feel involved with them. But I love that tarot is really something that I can do completely alone, and that it doesn't require, you know, waiting for somebody else to join me in the practice. That I can do it at any point of the day all by myself, and I appreciate that. And then I would say on the other end that tarot can also be a way to build community and connect with others. I think tarot is, and I definitely want to cultivate that. I definitely want to meet up with people in real life, in real physical space, to be together and to learn and talk about tarot. Like, I've never been to a tarot conference. I would love to do that at some point. I would love to maybe create a community group, maybe check in with a local tarot shop and see if they would, you know, provide the space and that people could come even if they don't buy anything. I would love to do that, or maybe find a way to maybe form a meetup group. I don't know yet what that looks like. And the only reason I pause has to do more with moving, and I don't want to set something up that I'm gonna then leave right away unless I know that it could sustain itself. But anyway, I do love that there are, I think sometimes community gets thrown around a lot and that can be nebulous, but I do think that tarot is definitely a way to connect with others. Connect with others to learn a new system, connect with others, maybe, you know, there are 3 of you and you connect at a bookstore because they give you the space, or maybe the library would, you know, give you a place to meet so that you can share your cards and your interpretations. I love that. And I'm definitely looking at ways that I can also cultivate the friendships that have started distance-wise in tarot, and to see how I might be a better tarot friend. Whether it's watching other people's channels, but also connecting with people, where I have exchanged phone numbers and email, for instance. How can I better show up and connect with those people too? And how can I connect with people in the physical, real world as well with tarot? But I definitely feel like it's a good entry point to do so. The next one. Tarot can be both the diving board and the pool. I probably need a better analogy, but what I was thinking here is, I love that, and I've talked about this in a couple of videos, I like when tarot can be a jumping off point to learn something new. As in art history. It was a subject I've been interested in, but never learned much about. But it's only been in the last couple of years where I realized, no, I'm really interested in it. But tarot, I think, was the impetus to that. And it caused me, maybe I would have eventually come to that anyway, but I think my interest in tarot and having some tarot decks that showcased paintings that are considered, monumental in human history, wanting to learn more about those artists and so forth. And so I like that tarot, I think, provoked me into finding an online art history class. That's a good example. Or it has been another way to factor in all of the different ways you can learn about tarot. There's the history part, right? And you can put the history of tarot in the context of human history. You can trace it in terms of settlement, colonialism, trade, laws, and how tarot evolved in terms of even like the interpretation of the cards, in terms of what's shown in cards, different cultures, right? There's a lot of different ways of looking at tarot from that aspect. So the art history aspect, the historical aspect, organized religion, spirituality, secret societies. Those are just things that you could learn about, and that's just off the top of my head. Symbolism, archetypes in psychology, that's all, stuff that you can learn from tarot. And those can all help you to learn more about tarot, and then vice versa. I'm definitely interested in learning more, because I live in the United States, learning a little bit more about how tarot evolved and changed here in the US compared to, let's say, the tarot tradition in England or the tarot tradition in, Western Europe. And things of that nature. But then it's also been for me a way to unite other passions of mine and tarot. So if tarot was a jumping off point to learn more about art history was also then a way to unite that with my love of tarot, or to practice learning other languages. I love photography, and so finding photography decks has been part of the fun. Learning, I love birds, and so picking up a couple of tarot decks that have birds in them. I'm learning this year, it's still pretty new, but I'm relearning how to knit. I've only knitted one scarf in my entire life, but I liked it a few years ago. So I picked that up again, and I'm learning how to crochet. And both of those, I've tied, pardon the pun, tied that back in with a tarot deck that goes into that aspect, the yarn tarot, for instance. Or my interest in natural history and environmental work, tarot or other decks that kind of approach that, or my interest in self-development and tarot decks that maybe help me to come to those points. Those are just a few examples, and maybe that's a little nebulous the way that I'm describing it, but I would say that. Let's see. Tarot also helps me to lead an examined life. I think I was doing so before, but I feel like tarot helps me to do so. And what I mean by examine, I mean everything from how does my life make sense? How does it fit into the bigger picture? How does it fit in? How is my being a human, and what is it that I can do with my life on this planet at this point? Tarot helps me to consider philosophy, but more than just stewing in my own thoughts, it gives me a point of reflection, but also kind of can reflect back to me. And I think that I lead a better life because I do lead my own life is better. Not that I'm better than somebody else's life. I don't mean it that way. I mean, I feel like my life is better because I'm examining those larger questions, and tarot helps me to do so. Tarot helps me to consider, how can I heal? How can I be better? How am I fine just as I am right now? How can I remember that not everything has to be about improvement or productivity and so forth? Tarot helps me to consider my place in the world, my place in politics, my place in social justice, my place in where I can do things immediately, and then where can I join with others. Tarot helps me in that examined life in all of those different ways. Related, but I still count it as separate, tarot for me has been a wonderful healing and self-development tool. I've long been interested in those topics and trying to find ways, but tarot has helped me to, sometimes if it was maybe reading a self-help book, but using a tarot deck along with it, sometimes it has helped me to recognize that self-help voice was not helpful. It has helped me to understand that I'm whole as I am, healed and healing, whole and healing, and that, yeah, tarot definitely has helped me with some of that work. Whether it was to identify questions or to help direct my process, or even to help identify those healing tools that were not helpful, or those self-help voices that were not helpful. For sure, tarot has helped me in those ways. I love that tarot is ever evolving and changing. And I touched upon this in a couple of other ways, but you know, the fact that we are looking at cards that are not so white, cards that reflect the global majority, or that we want that, or even just understanding how tarot illustration and tarot interpretation changes. My interpretation has changed in the 10 years that I've read. But I hope that it will continue to evolve and change in the way that language does. And I think tarot is a language. And I love that there are people out there forcing it to change more quickly, artists that are demanding their creations to help us evolve in what we consider a typical scene in a card, for instance, and how we interpret those meanings and so forth. And I just love that tarot does continue to evolve and change. And that tarot is big, small, portable, elaborate, simple, confusing, easy, layered, superficial, surface or surface level. I love that tarot is all of those things. I love that tarot is contradictory. I love that one deck is small and portable, and yet, you know, there are libraries full. I have probably 3 bookshelves full of tarot books. So while it might be portable, I could put this in my pocket, that there's so much to learn about tarot. There's so much to consider. You know, you can read tarot very simply. You can read it you can just get immersed in the symbolism and never read the cards, right? You can get really caught up in, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can get really caught up in the questions. You get really caught up in the symbolism. Never read the cards at all for anyone, or even for yourself. But also that it can be that very simple and yet gentle voice helping guide you in a day. I love that it's all of those things and more. And it can be, you know, 5 minutes in the morning, a 1-card pull, or maybe even less than that. 1 minute. You pull a card, you look at it, you interpret it, and you move on. Or you might do a big tableau kind of spread that takes you all afternoon. You know, and you layer it with more cards and more meaning. I love it for all of that complexity. And then the last one is tarot, I think, unlike many, many things, and this might not be the best way to describe it, but I like to think that tarot, you can fully participate from day 1 or year 70, or wherever you are in the journey. So as in, the first day that I bought a tarot deck, this is not my first tarot deck, this is just what was nearby, the Dragon Tarot, but from the first day that I bought a tarot deck, I could lay cards out and I could read them, even if it did mean looking back and forth at each card and then trying to ponder what that all meant. But I could fully participate right there. And I'm doing the same thing now. And so anybody who gets to pick up a tarot deck can fully participate in the same way that someone who's been reading tarot for 70 years or longer can also participate. It doesn't require a test to enter in. You don't have to wait for somebody else to tell you that you can do it. And I'm not even getting into the part about reading for others. I think ongoing learning is always important, but I just mean that all you need, you can do it from day 1, even if it is referring to the guidebook a lot. But you can fully do it from day 1, and you can fully do it, you know, like I said, year 70. So those are 20 of the many ways that I love tarot. Thanks for being here. If you would like to create your own love list, or your own love letter to tarot, let me know. I would love to hear about it. Anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for your time. Thank you to tarot for prompting me to start a tarot channel. That's another way that I get to participate, and it's a fun aspect of my tarot practice. I hope that you are well. I hope you're finding joy. I hope you're finding ways to take care of yourself. I hope you're enjoying the tarot deck or decks that you have. I hope that you are finding ways to take care of the earth and others in a mutual aid sense. and I sure hope that I get to see you in another video. Take care and thank you very much.